Hello viewers, hello subscribers, and hello boxing world. And welcome to another edition of Fantasy Bout Hour, the channel dedicated to bringing you fantasy matchups on a regular basis. If there's a particular matchup that you want me to cover, please leave it in the comment section, and I promise to honor your request. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification. Please share these videos, share this channel. I thank you to my subscribers, and I thank you to my viewers. Keep the requests coming, and I'll keep the videos coming. The fight I'll be covering in today's video comes by way of request, and it is coming from OA. I thank you for your request and for your participation in the channel. I really appreciate it. The fight that OA mentioned is Roy Jones Jr. versus Floyd Money Mayweather at 154 pounds, which is junior middleweight, of course. Now, some may argue that Roy is too big for Floyd, too good for Floyd, and too powerful for Floyd. And these are legitimate arguments to a certain extent. But the fact that they both fought at 154 makes this a legitimate matchup. And if Floyd would have come along at the right time, this fight could have happened at 154. I don't think Roy was at his absolute best at 154, but he was still dangerous. He was still fast. And in this matchup, he has the size advantage. I'm standing at 5 feet 11 inches, whereas Floyd stands at 5 feet 8 inches. So this is a legitimate matchup. And I'm not comparing Floyd to Diego Corrales. Two different styles, two different skill levels. But I believe Diego Corrales was 6 foot tall. So Floyd has fought tall fighters. Most of his opponents early in his career being taller than him. So I don't think the height thing would be a big issue. But as I mentioned, both similar styles. As far as the way they throw their lead right hands, the speed, the reflexes. Roy was a little more unorthodox, whereas Floyd was an extreme technician. And so Roy was more showy than Floyd. Floyd was more defensively responsible. So how would this fight play out? And what would it come down to? Would it come down to skills? Would it come down to power? Would it come down to size? And the reason this is such a difficult fight to analyze is because there are so many factors. It's more than just who's better or who's worse, who's tougher. I mean, this is a really complicated fight with all of these variables. So, now I will say that if Roy connected clean on Floyd, Floyd would be in some trouble. He'd possibly be knocked out or stopped. But that's a big if. Could Floyd adjust to Roy? We know that Floyd can match Roy's speed. And as far as the timing, they both had great timing. I think Floyd's timing was a little better. As far as skills, I think Floyd's skills, he was a little more skillful than Roy, but Roy was more dangerous. Floyd would basically have to fight a tightrope type of fight. That's to say that he would basically have to fight the perfect fight. And if anyone is capable of fighting the perfect fight, Floyd is capable of fighting the perfect fight. As far as who was best at 154, Floyd really didn't belong in 154, but being the champion that he is, he took that risk twice. and those risks paid off. The first fight at 154 for Floyd being against De La Hoya, and the second one being against Canelo Alvarez. And both of those paid off. Some will make the argument that De La Hoya won the fight. I don't agree with that. I don't see it. As a matter of fact, I didn't agree with the split decision. Floyd should have won a unanimous decision, in my very humble opinion. Sorry. Yes, Floyd should have won a unanimous decision. But we won't get into that. And I totally disagreed with Floyd Sr.'s comments after that fight. I think he was a little bitter about some things that happened between them beforehand, but won't get into that. But wow, Floyd Money Mayweather versus Roy Jones Jr. at 154. Who takes it? Who takes it? Who takes it? Well, Floyd would have to be careful. Floyd couldn't make any mistakes in this fight. And I think this fight would come down to countering and power punching. Who would get their counters off first? Well, who would just be first in this fight? And so whoever wants to win this fight would have to be first. I think Roy would have to impose his size, and Roy would have to impose his will in this fight. And so, but Floyd fights fantastically off the back foot. Floyd is not easy to hit, and he wouldn't be easy to hit even for Roy. So, as I said, there are so many variables in this fight. I'm trying to get to the conclusion, but these variables keep popping up in my mind. And so, wow, the size and the power of Roy, along with the speed and all the other things I mentioned. They both throw great lead right hands. They both throw great leaping left hooks, what I call them, leaping left hooks. So as again, getting back to the countering, I think that would be the main factor in this fight. But Roy would have to definitely impose his size, and impose his will. But would Floyd be able to adjust to Roy pressuring him? Probably so. Floyd fought his best when he was on his back foot. Countering, shoulder rolls, Philly shell defense, and so on and so forth. And I was just thinking about the James Toney fight. James Toney and Floyd are similar in the fact that they both use the Philly shell defense and the shoulder rolls. James lets his hands go a little more. Floyd is not really a big combination puncher. He's more of a pot shotter. Defends well and pot shots off of the Philly shell defense. So, and one thing about Floyd, and I mention this every time I cover Floyd, he has a way of making his opponents drop their punch output. And because he counters so effectively and his counters are so accurate that his opponents just can't throw anything because they're going to get countered. They're going to get countered. And who wants to eat punches? So a lot of times Floyd's opponent is in the position of looking for the perfect shot. That's what happened to Shane Mosley. I'm just looking for the perfect shot in order to not get countered. So with a counter puncher like Floyd, you're not going to take many risks. But once again, Roy is just as good of a counter puncher. He's just as good. He's not as defensively responsible as Floyd. Roy dropped his hands a lot, in order to showboat. And he's an entertainer. He's more of an entertainer than Floyd was. So now if Roy finds himself in the position of trying to land the perfect shot, it could be a long night for him. But as far as Hi, how you doing? But as far as, now let's get to the power aspect of the fight. Would Roy be able to take Floyd's punches? Yes, now we're getting down to the nitty gritty. So Roy probably wouldn't fear Floyd's power, but Floyd, coming up from the smaller weights, coming up from junior lightweight, he would have to worry about Roy's power. Now, see, this is where it gets interesting. Now, even if Roy ran into getting countered, would Floyd be able to keep Roy off of him? I don't know. But to be honest, I doubt it. So this fight comes down to respect for power. Respect for power. Roy may not respect or fear Floyd's power, but Floyd would definitely have to respect and fear Roy's power. Okay, so who can get the respect in this fight? Who would be more cautious in this fight? I think Roy would get the respect in this fight. I think Roy would get the respect in this fight, and I think Floyd would be the cautious one in this fight. So I think this fight comes down to power and respect for power. So in that case, I'm going to have to go with Roy by decision. I really don't see him knocking Floyd out. I really don't see it because Floyd will fight cautiously, and not let his hands go as much, once he felt Roy's power. So I rarely go against Floyd in these contests, but just trying to be unbiased and as objective as I can, I have to go with Roy by unanimous decision. Let me know what you think, and I will see you on the next video.